In the shadowy corridors of Buckingham Palace, where every whisper carries weight and every glance holds meaning, Detective Sarah Mitchell never expected to become the guardian of the most dangerous secret in the British monarchy. When 3 deliberate taps on her shoulder during a routine security briefing changed everything, she found herself thrust into a world where loyalty could kill, silence could save a life, and the wrong move could topple a 1,000-year-old institution. This is the true story of how one woman's quick thinking and a royal guard's desperate courage exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, threatened the life of Catherine, Princess of Wales, and nearly brought down the crown itself. In a palace where protocol reigned supreme, sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to save a life. What started as an ordinary Tuesday morning would become the most extraordinary and terrifying week in modern royal history. Sarah Mitchell thought she was just another face in the crowd of security personnel. She had no idea she was about to become Kate Middleton's secret lifeline. Detective Sarah Mitchell had been working royal security for exactly 18 months when her world turned upside down on a gray November morning. She stood in the briefing room of Buckingham Palace, surrounded by 30 other security personnel, listening to the daily updates about the Princess of Wales' upcoming charity gala. The room buzzed with the usual professional chatter about routes, timing, and protocols. Sarah adjusted her earpiece and glanced at her watch. Catherine was scheduled to arrive at the palace in 2 hours for final preparations. As the newest member of the Royal Protection Team, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility every day. Protecting the future Queen of England was not a job she took lightly. Commander James Hartley stood at the front of the room, his voice crisp and authoritative as he outlined the evening security arrangements. Sarah had always respected Hartley. He was a 20-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police, decorated for his service, and known for his unwavering dedication to royal safety. His reputation was spotless, his record unblemished. But something felt different that morning. Sarah couldn't pinpoint what it was initially. Perhaps it was the way Hartley's eyes seemed to avoid direct contact with certain team members, or how his usually confident voice carried the slightest tremor when discussing the princess's schedule. She had learned to trust her instincts during her years in law enforcement, and those instincts were screaming that something was wrong. As Hartley continued his briefing, Sarah noticed Robert Thompson, one of the senior royal guards, standing unusually close behind her. Thompson was a man of few words, respected by everyone in the palace. He had served the royal family for over 15 years, and his loyalty was considered beyond question. Sarah had worked with him several times, and she knew him to be professional, alert, and completely trustworthy. When Hartley began discussing the specific security details for the charity gala, Thompson moved slightly closer to Sarah. She could feel his presence behind her left shoulder. It wasn't unusual for guards to position themselves strategically during briefings, but something about Thompson's proximity felt intentional, almost urgent. Then it happened. 3 deliberate taps on her left shoulder. Tap, tap, tap. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. In the world of covert security operations, unexpected physical contact was never accidental. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Was Thompson trying to get her attention? Was this some kind of signal? She had never experienced anything like this during a briefing. She remained perfectly still, not wanting to draw attention to whatever was happening. Thompson's hand lingered on her shoulder for just a moment longer than necessary, then withdrew. Sarah felt a small piece of paper being slipped into the pocket of her jacket, with movements so subtle that no one else in the room could have noticed. Her heart began to pound, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of training had taught her to control her reactions, even in unexpected situations. She continued to face forward, listening to Hartley's words while her mind processed what had just occurred. Thompson stepped back to his original position as if nothing had happened. Sarah risked a quick glance over her shoulder and caught his eye for just a split second. What she saw there chilled her to the bone. Thompson's usually calm and confident expression showed something she had never seen before. Fear. Pure, undisguised fear. The briefing continued for another 20 minutes, but Sarah barely heard a word of it. Her mind was consumed with questions. Why had Thompson chosen her? What was in the note? What kind of danger could possibly require such secretive communication within the secure walls of Buckingham Palace? When Hartley finally dismissed the team, Sarah made her way to her assigned post, her hand unconsciously touching the pocket where the note rested. She had been assigned to monitor the palace's east wing, a relatively quiet area during the morning hours. It would give her the privacy she needed to read whatever Thompson had given her. Sarah walked through the ornate corridors, past priceless paintings and centuries-old tapestries, her mind racing. The palace suddenly felt different, as if shadows lurked in every corner, and danger could emerge from behind every door. She had always felt secure within these walls, protected by layers of security and protocol. Now, for the first time, she felt vulnerable. She reached her post at the end of a long corridor lined with portraits of former monarchs. The area was deserted, just as she had hoped. Sarah looked around carefully, ensuring she was alone, then reached into her pocket with trembling fingers. The note was small, no bigger than a business card, written in Thompson's neat handwriting. The words she read made her blood run cold. Kate is in danger. Trust no one in command. Meet me in the Queen's Garden at 2 p.m. Come alone. Destroy this note. Lives depend on your silence. Sarah read the message 3 times, each reading making the reality more terrifying. Thompson, a man known for his steadiness and reliability, was telling her that Catherine, Princess of Wales, was in immediate danger. More shocking still, he was warning her not to trust their commanding officers. Her first instinct was to run immediately to Hartley or to contact the senior security officials. But Thompson's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one in command. If Thompson was right, then the very people she would normally turn to for help might be the source of the danger. Sarah pulled out a lighter and watched the note burn to ash in a nearby waste bin. The evidence was gone, but the message was burned into her memory. She had less than 4 hours before her meeting with Thompson, 4 hours to try to make sense of what felt like an impossible situation. She spent the next hour walking her assigned route, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Thompson's service record, his reputation, his family. He was married with 2 teenage daughters, lived in a modest house in Surrey, and had never shown any signs of mental instability or disloyalty. If Thompson said Kate was in danger, Sarah believed him. But what kind of danger? And how could it exist within the most secure building in Britain? The palace was protected by layers of security, from the armed police at the gates to the sophisticated surveillance systems monitoring every corridor. Every staff member underwent extensive background checks, and their movements were constantly monitored. As Sarah continued her rounds, she began to notice things she had never paid attention to before. The way certain guards avoided eye contact with each other, the hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when she approached, the subtle tension that seemed to permeate the usually professional atmosphere. At noon, Catherine arrived at the palace for her final preparations. Sarah watched from her post as the princess's motorcade pulled through the main gates. Even from a distance, Catherine looked radiant and confident, completely unaware of any potential danger. She stepped out of her car with her characteristic grace, smiling at the waiting staff members. Sarah's chest tightened with anxiety. How could someone so beloved, so protected, be in danger within these walls? And what was she, a relatively new member of the team, supposed to do about it? The afternoon dragged on endlessly. Sarah found herself scrutinizing every face she encountered, wondering who could be trusted and who might pose a threat. The palace staff went about their duties as usual, but Sarah now saw potential danger everywhere. The chef carrying a tray could have poison hidden among the delicacies. The maid with access to Catherine's quarters could plant listening devices, or worse. Even the gardeners working outside could be gathering intelligence for unknown enemies. At 1:45 p.m., Sarah made her way toward the Queen's Garden, her heart pounding with each step. The garden was a private area of the palace grounds, beautifully maintained but rarely visited during the afternoon hours. It would provide the privacy Thompson had requested for their meeting. She arrived at the designated meeting spot, a secluded bench surrounded by roses and lavender. The garden was peaceful, almost serene, but Sarah felt anything but calm. She checked her watch. 1:58 p.m. Thompson would arrive any moment and she would finally learn the truth about the danger facing Catherine. As she waited, Sarah's mind wandered to her own motivations for taking this job. She had always admired the royal family, particularly Catherine's dedication to charitable causes and her grace under constant public scrutiny. The idea that someone might want to harm her was both incomprehensible and infuriating. At exactly 2 p.m., Thompson appeared from behind a large oak tree. He looked around carefully before approaching Sarah, his usual composed demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. His face was pale and his hands shook slightly as he sat down beside her on the bench. "Thank you for coming," he said in a low voice, barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure if you would." "What's this about, Thompson?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your note mentioned Kate was in danger." "What kind of danger?" Thompson looked around once more, then leaned closer to Sarah. "There's a plot," he said, his words coming out in a rush. "Someone is planning to harm the princess during tonight's gala. I overheard a conversation this morning. Before the briefing, two men discussing timing, security gaps, and—" He paused, swallowing hard, discussing the princess's death as if it were a certainty. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Who were these men?" "That's the problem," Thompson replied, his voice breaking slightly. "One of them was Commander Hartley. Our own commanding officer is involved in a plot to kill Catherine." The world seemed to stop spinning. Sarah stared at Thompson, hoping desperately that she had misheard him. Commander Hartley, the man they all looked up to, the man responsible for protecting the royal family, was planning to harm Catherine? "Are you absolutely certain?" Sarah asked, though she could see the certainty in Thompson's eyes. "I heard every word," Thompson confirmed. "They were in Hartley's office early this morning. I was delivering some paperwork when I heard voices through the door. The conversation was unmistakable. They're planning to make it look like an accident or a security failure." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. If Hartley was involved, then the entire security operation for the gala could be compromised. The routes, the timing, the personnel assignments, everything Catherine's safety depended on could be part of the trap. "We have to contact someone," Sarah said urgently. "The Scotland Yard, the Palace Guard Command, someone in authority who can stop this." Thompson shook his head grimly. "I've been thinking about this all morning. Hartley mentioned having allies. People who would ensure the investigation went nowhere. We don't know how far this conspiracy reaches. If we contact the wrong person, we could make things worse, or we could end up dead ourselves." The reality of their situation began to sink in. They were two security officers with no proof except Thompson's testimony about an overheard conversation. They were up against their own commanding officer and unknown allies within the system. And they had less than 6 hours before Catherine would be walking into what could be a carefully orchestrated trap. "So what do we do?" Sarah asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. Thompson pulled out a small notebook and showed Sarah a page of hastily scribbled notes. "I've been working on this since this morning. The gala has 3 critical moments where Catherine will be most vulnerable: her arrival at the venue, her speech on the main stage, and her departure. If they're planning to make it look like an accident, it will happen during one of these moments." Sarah studied Thompson's notes, her respect for his thorough thinking growing with each detail. He had analyzed the security arrangements, identified potential weak points, and even noted which guards would be positioned where. "The problem is," Thompson continued, "Hartley controls all of these arrangements. He can move personnel, change routes, create gaps in security. We need to be ready to act when the moment comes." "But how can just the two of us protect Catherine against an entire conspiracy?" Sarah asked. Thompson met her eyes with a determination she had never seen before. "We can't save her by following the official protocols. Those protocols are compromised. But we can shadow her movements, watch for the signs of an attack, and be ready to intervene when necessary. It won't be easy, and it won't be safe. But it's the only chance she has." As they sat in the peaceful garden, surrounded by the beauty and tranquility of the palace grounds, Sarah realized that her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a security officer following orders. She had become part of a desperate mission to save the life of the future Queen of England, working against her own colleagues and commanders. The weight of responsibility was almost unbearable. If they failed, Catherine would die, and the monarchy would face its greatest crisis in modern history. If they succeeded but were discovered, their careers would be over, and they might face charges of insubordination or worse. But if they did nothing, an innocent woman would lose her life to a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of the security apparatus designed to protect her. Thompson stood up from the bench, his decision clearly made. The gala starts at 7 p.m. We have 4.5 hours to prepare. Are you with me? Sarah looked up at him, this quiet man who had risked everything to warn her about the danger. She thought about Catherine's smile when she had arrived that afternoon, her complete trust in the people around her, her lack of awareness that her life hung in the balance. "I'm with you," Sarah said, standing to join him. "Whatever it takes, we'll keep her safe." As they walked back toward the palace, Sarah felt the full weight of what they had committed to. Tonight would be the most important night of their lives, a night when two ordinary security officers would stand between evil and innocence, between conspiracy and justice, between death and the future of the British monarchy. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of careful planning and rising tension. Sarah and Thompson had agreed to meet again in 30 minutes to develop their strategy, but first, they needed to gather more information without arousing suspicion. Sarah returned to her assigned post in the East Wing, but her mind was entirely focused on observing the movements and behaviors of her colleagues. She had worked alongside these people for over a year, trusting them implicitly with her life and the lives of the royal family. Now she found herself studying each face, listening to every conversation, searching for any sign that might reveal the extent of the conspiracy. As she walked through the corridors, Sarah began to notice patterns she had never seen before. Commander Hartley had been unusually busy all afternoon, meeting privately with various team members in his office. Each meeting lasted exactly 10 minutes, and the participants emerged looking serious and determined. Sarah recognized some of the faces: Detective Inspector Morrison, Sergeant Williams, and Officer Bradley, all experienced members of the protection unit. The realization hit her like a physical blow. If Hartley was recruiting multiple team members for the conspiracy, then the plot against Catherine was far more extensive than Thompson had initially suspected. They weren't dealing with a single rogue officer or a small group of conspirators. This appeared to be a coordinated effort involving multiple levels of the Royal Protection Service. Sarah's hands began to tremble as she processed the implications. How many people were involved? How long had this been planned? And most terrifyingly, what was their ultimate goal? Was this simply about harming Catherine, or was it part of a larger plot against the royal family? She forced herself to remain calm and continue her observations. At 3:15 p.m., she witnessed something that confirmed her worst fears. Officer Bradley emerged from Hartley's office and immediately approached Detective Inspector Morrison in the hallway. Sarah couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see Bradley hand Morrison a small envelope. Morrison opened it, read the contents quickly, then nodded grimly before burning the paper in a nearby ashtray. The sight of the burning paper brought back memories of her own destroyed note from Thompson. This was definitely coordinated, definitely planned, and definitely dangerous. Sarah realized that Thompson had been incredibly brave to warn her, because anyone involved in this conspiracy would likely face severe consequences if they were discovered attempting to interfere. When Sarah met Thompson again at 3:30 p.m. in a service corridor on the second floor, she immediately shared her observations. Thompson listened intently, his face growing paler with each detail. "That confirms what I suspected," he said quietly. "This isn't just Hartley going rogue. This is an organized operation involving multiple people within our own unit. The question is, how many people are involved, and how many are still loyal to their actual duty?" Thompson had spent his time conducting his own surveillance, and his findings were equally disturbing. "I counted at least 6 people who had private meetings with Hartley this afternoon. 6 people who now have written instructions that they immediately destroyed after reading. That's 6 potential conspirators in addition to Hartley himself." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the scope of the conspiracy. 7 people involved in a plot to kill Catherine. How is that even possible? How did Hartley recruit so many people without anyone noticing? "I've been thinking about that," Thompson replied. "Hartley has been building relationships within the unit for years. He knows everyone's personal situations, their financial problems, their career ambitions, their weaknesses. If someone needed money or wanted a promotion, Hartley was always there to help. He's been positioning himself as the person everyone turns to when they need assistance." The picture Thompson was painting was chilling. Hartley hadn't simply decided one day to betray the royal family. He had been systematically building a network of people who were indebted to him, people who might be willing to follow his orders even if those orders were morally questionable.
But surely not everyone would agree to murder, Sarah protested.
These are police officers, sworn to protect and serve. They have families, reputations, careers to consider. Thompson's expression was grim. I don't think Hartley told all of them what the real plan is. Some of them probably think they're part of a legitimate security operation. Others might have been told that Catherine is somehow a security risk herself. Hartley is smart enough to tell each person only what they need to know to follow their orders. This revelation added another layer of complexity to their situation. Not only were they outnumbered, but some of the people working against them might not even realize they were participating in a conspiracy. Thompson was right. Hartley was smart, methodical, and extremely dangerous. We need to identify exactly who is involved and what their specific roles are, Sarah said. If we're going to protect Catherine tonight, we need to know where the threats are coming from. Thompson nodded and pulled out his notebook again. I've been working on that. Based on what I observed this afternoon and what I overheard this morning, I think I can piece together at least part of their plan. He opened to a page covered with detailed notes and rough diagrams. The charity gala is being held at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. Catherine's schedule has her arriving at 7 p.m., giving a speech at 8:30 p.m., and departing at 10 p.m. Hartley controls the security arrangements for all three of those time periods. Sarah studied Thompson's notes, impressed by his attention to detail. He had mapped out the route from Buckingham Palace to the Opera House, identified the security positions at the venue, and noted the timing of each scheduled activity. Here's what I think is happening, Thompson continued, pointing to specific locations on his diagram. Hartley has positioned his conspirators at key points throughout the security operation. Detective Inspector Morrison will be part of Catherine's escort team during the drive to the Opera House. Sergeant Williams has been assigned to coordinate security backstage during Catherine's speech. Officer Bradley will be monitoring the exits during her departure. The strategic placement of conspirators was clearly designed to ensure that no matter when or how the attack occurred, there would be people in position to either carry it out or prevent interference from loyal security personnel. What about the other three people you saw meeting with Hartley? Sarah asked. I'm still working on that, Thompson admitted. But I suspect they have roles in the secondary security arrangements, the people who monitor communications, coordinate with local police, and manage emergency protocols. If something goes wrong with the primary plan, they're probably there to ensure that any investigation or response is compromised. Sarah was beginning to understand the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't a hastily planned attack by a few disgruntled officers. This was a sophisticated operation designed to eliminate Catherine while making it appear to be either an accident or a security failure. The conspirators had thought through every angle, planned for multiple contingencies, and positioned themselves to control every aspect of the investigation that would follow. Thompson, Sarah said slowly, what if this isn't just about Catherine? What if she's not the only target? Thompson looked up from his notes, his expression troubled. I've been wondering about that too. If they're willing to kill Catherine, and if they have this level of organization within the Royal Protection Service, then other members of the royal family could be at risk as well. The thought was almost too terrifying to contemplate. If Hartley's conspiracy was part of a larger plot against the monarchy, then Prince William, King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the children could all be in danger. The charity gala could be just the beginning of a coordinated attack on the entire royal family. We need to focus on tonight, Sarah said, forcing herself to concentrate on what they could actually control. We can worry about wider implications later. Right now, our job is to keep Catherine alive. Thompson agreed, and they spent the next hour developing their strategy for the evening. They couldn't simply alert Catherine to the danger, because that would expose them to the conspirators and potentially make the situation worse. They couldn't contact external authorities, because they had no proof and didn't know who could be trusted. Their only option was to shadow Catherine throughout the evening and be prepared to intervene when the attack came. I'll find a way to position myself near Catherine during the drive to the Opera House, Sarah volunteered. If Morrison tries anything during transport, I'll be ready to stop him. I'll focus on the venue itself, Thompson replied. I know the Opera House layout from previous events. There are several areas where an attack could be staged to look like an accident. The main staircase, the balcony areas, even the stage itself, during Catherine's speech. They agreed to maintain communication through their standard radio channels, but they would need to be extremely careful about what they said. Any indication that they were aware of the conspiracy would put both of them in immediate danger. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself studying Catherine from a distance whenever their paths crossed in the palace. The princess was preparing for the gala with her usual grace and attention to detail, completely unaware that her life was in danger. She met with her personal stylist, reviewed her speech notes, and spoke warmly with the palace staff. Her genuine kindness and concern for others made the thought of anyone wanting to harm her even more incomprehensible. At 5:30 p.m., Sarah received her official assignment for the evening. As she had hoped, she was assigned to the escort team that would accompany Catherine to the Royal Opera House. Detective Inspector Morrison would be the lead officer, which confirmed Thompson's suspicions about his involvement in the conspiracy. Sarah's heart raced as she read the assignment sheet. She would be sitting directly behind Morrison in the escort vehicle, close enough to monitor his actions, but also close enough to become a target herself if he realized she was aware of the plot. At 6 p.m., the security team gathered for their final briefing before departing for the Opera House. Commander Hartley stood at the front of the room, looking every bit the professional officer he had appeared to be for the past 20 years. His voice was calm and confident as he reviewed the evening's arrangements, and nothing in his demeanor suggested that he was planning to betray everything he had sworn to protect. "Tonight's event is particularly important," Hartley began, his tone serious but not unusual for a high-profile royal engagement. "The princess will be in a public venue for over 3 hours, interacting with hundreds of guests and media representatives. Our job is to ensure her complete safety while allowing her to fulfill her royal duties." Sarah listened to every word, searching for any hidden meaning or coded instructions to the conspirators. But Hartley was too skilled for that. His briefing sounded exactly like every other security briefing she had attended. "Detective Inspector Morrison will lead the escort team," Hartley continued, making eye contact with Morrison, who nodded professionally. "Sergeant Williams will coordinate venue security. Officer Bradley will manage exit protocols. Each of you has specific responsibilities that are critical to the princess's safety." The way Hartley emphasized the word critical sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Was he giving his conspirators a final reminder of their roles in the plot? As the briefing concluded and the team began preparing for departure, Sarah caught Thompson's eye across the room. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. Their plan was still in effect, and they were as ready as they could be for what lay ahead. At 6:45 p.m., Catherine appeared in the palace courtyard, looking stunning in an elegant blue gown that sparkled under the evening lights. Her smile was radiant as she greeted the security team, thanking each officer personally for their service. When she reached Sarah, Catherine paused for a moment. "I don't think we've worked together before," Catherine said warmly. "Thank you for being part of tonight's team." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat as she looked into Catherine's trusting eyes. "It's an honor, Your Royal Highness. We'll take excellent care of you." Catherine's smile widened. "I know you will. You all always do." As Catherine walked toward the waiting vehicles, Sarah felt the full weight of her responsibility. This kind, gracious woman had no idea that some of the very people she was thanking were planning to kill her. She trusted them completely, just as the British people trusted them to protect their beloved princess. The motorcade consisted of 3 vehicles: a lead car with advanced security, Catherine's limousine with her personal protection team, and a follow car with additional officers. Sarah was assigned to the limousine with Catherine, Morrison, and 2 other officers. Thompson would be in the follow car, positioned to respond to any threats from behind. As they settled into the vehicle, Sarah found herself sitting directly across from Catherine, with Morrison to her left and Officer Stevens to her right. The conversation was light and pleasant, with Catherine discussing her excitement about the charity event and her gratitude for the funds they hoped to raise for children's hospitals. Morrison participated in the conversation normally, showing no signs of the deadly intentions Thompson had overheard. Sarah watched his every movement, looking for any indication that he was preparing to act. But he appeared to be exactly what he had always seemed: a professional, dedicated officer committed to protecting the royal family. As the motorcade pulled away from Buckingham Palace and began the journey through London's evening traffic, Sarah realized that the most dangerous night of her life had officially begun. Somewhere in the next 3 hours, People she had worked with and trusted would attempt to murder the woman sitting across from her. Her job was to make sure they failed, even if it cost her own life in the process. The lights of London flashed past the windows as they drove through the city, and Sarah silently prayed that she and Thompson would be skilled enough, brave enough, and lucky enough to save Catherine's life and expose the conspiracy that threatened to shake the very foundations of the British monarchy. The Royal Opera House stood magnificently illuminated against the London evening sky, its grand facade gleaming under the array of spotlights positioned for the charity gala. Red carpets stretched from the street to the main entrance, lined with photographers and excited crowds hoping to catch a glimpse of Catherine. The scene looked picture-perfect, exactly as it should for a royal charity event. But Sarah knew that beneath the glamorous exterior, deadly plans were already in motion. As their motorcade approached the opera house, Sarah's eyes swept every detail of the scene before them. Thompson's voice crackled through her earpiece, barely audible over the radio chatter of the security team. "Control to all units. Approaching venue. Everything appears normal." His words sounded routine, but Sarah caught the subtle emphasis on appears. Thompson was telling her that he was watching, ready, and as concerned as she was about what lay ahead. Detective Inspector Morrison sat beside Sarah in the limousine, his expression calm and professional as he reviewed the security arrangements one final time. Catherine chatted cheerfully about the evening's program, completely unaware that the man responsible for her protection might be planning her death. Sarah forced herself to smile and nod at appropriate moments while every nerve in her body remained alert for any sign of danger. The motorcade pulled to a smooth stop in front of the opera house. Morrison was the first to exit, scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency before giving the all-clear signal for Catherine to emerge. Sarah watched his every movement, looking for any deviation from standard protocol, but Morrison's behavior was impeccable. Either he was an exceptional actor, or the attack was planned for a different time and place. Catherine stepped out of the limousine to thunderous applause from the gathered crowd. She looked radiant under the camera flashes, waving gracefully and pausing to speak with several dignitaries who had gathered to greet her. Sarah positioned herself 3 steps behind and to the left of Catherine, close enough to intervene quickly if necessary, but far enough to maintain the proper protocol. The entrance to the opera house went smoothly. Catherine was escorted through the grand foyer, past marble columns and crystal chandeliers, greeting dozens of guests who had paid substantial amounts to attend the charity event. Sarah's training took over as she automatically scanned faces in the crowd, monitored exit routes, and kept track of her colleagues' positions. Sergeant Williams appeared at various points during the entrance process, always in the right place at the right time, always appearing completely professional. Like Morrison, he showed no outward signs of malicious intent. Sarah began to wonder if Thompson had misunderstood what he overheard, but she quickly dismissed that thought. Thompson was not the type of man to make such a serious mistake. The first hour of the gala proceeded without incident. Catherine moved gracefully through the reception, speaking with donors, charity officials, and other dignitaries. She was in her element, genuinely interested in the cause they were supporting, and deeply grateful to everyone who had contributed to the evening's success. Sarah marveled at Catherine's ability to make each person feel important and appreciated, even while surrounded by the formal structure of royal protocol. At 8:15 p.m., 15 minutes before Catherine's scheduled speech, Sarah noticed the first sign that something was wrong. Officer Bradley, who was supposed to be monitoring the main exits, was nowhere to be seen. Sarah scanned the grand foyer and the main auditorium, but Bradley had disappeared from his assigned position. Her heart began to race. Thompson had identified Bradley as one of the conspirators, and now he had abandoned his post, just before the most vulnerable moment of the evening. Sarah wanted to radio Thompson immediately, but she couldn't risk alerting the other conspirators to her suspicions. Instead, she moved closer to Catherine, who was being escorted toward the stage area for her speech. The main auditorium was packed with over 1,000 guests, all eagerly awaiting the princess's remarks. The stage itself was elevated about 4 feet above the audience level, with several staircases providing access from different directions. As they approached the backstage area, Sarah caught sight of Sergeant Williams positioning himself near the main stage controls. He appeared to be checking lighting and sound equipment, which could be a legitimate part of his security duties. But Sarah remembered Thompson's warning that Williams was one of the conspirators. and his position near the technical controls could be significant if they were planning to stage an accident. Catherine was introduced to thunderous applause, and she walked confidently onto the stage. Sarah positioned herself in the wings, close enough to reach Catherine quickly, but out of sight of the audience. From her vantage point, she could see Williams at the lighting controls, Morrison near the main stage entrance, and Thompson at the back of the auditorium. Catherine began her speech with her characteristic warmth and sincerity, speaking about the importance of children's health care and thanking the donors for their generosity. She was a natural speaker, engaging the audience completely while remaining poised and elegant under the bright stage lights. 5 minutes into the speech, Sarah noticed Williams making adjustments to something at the control panel. Her training kicked in immediately. Any unexpected changes to the technical setup during a royal appearance were potential security threats. She moved closer to Williams, trying to see what he was doing without making her presence obvious. Williams was manipulating wiring behind the lighting control panel, working quickly but carefully. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized what she was seeing. He appeared to be bypassing safety systems, possibly creating the potential for an electrical malfunction that could endanger Catherine on stage. Sarah faced an impossible decision. If she confronted Williams immediately, she would expose herself as someone who suspected the conspiracy. But if she waited for more evidence, Catherine could be electrocuted or seriously injured by a rigged lighting system. She had seconds to decide how to proceed. She chose action over caution. Moving quickly but quietly, Sarah approached Williams from behind. "Sergeant," she whispered, "is there a problem with the equipment?" Williams spun around, startled by her sudden appearance. For just a moment, his professional mask slipped, and Sarah saw guilt and panic in his eyes. "Just routine checks," he said quickly, but his hands were shaking as he tried to close the control panel. "Let me help," Sarah insisted, moving closer to examine what Williams had been doing. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. Williams had indeed tampered with the electrical safety systems, creating the potential for a massive power surge that would travel directly to the stage lighting above Catherine. "Step away from the controls," Sarah said quietly but firmly, her hand moving instinctively toward the radio to call for backup. Williams' expression hardened. "You don't understand what you're seeing," he hissed. "This is bigger than you know. Walk away now, or you'll regret it." "The only thing I understand is that you're threatening the princess," Sarah replied, keeping her voice low to avoid drawing attention from the nearby guests and staff. "Step away from the controls now." Williams glanced toward the stage where Catherine was continuing her speech, unaware of the drama unfolding in the wings. "You have no idea what's at stake here," he said desperately. "There are forces involved that you can't comprehend. If you interfere, you'll be putting more than just Catherine at risk." Sarah's mind raced. William seemed genuinely frightened, but whether his fear was of being caught or of something larger, she couldn't tell. "Then explain it to me," she said. "Help me understand why you would want to hurt Catherine." "It's not about wanting to hurt her," Williams replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's about preventing something much worse. Catherine has been investigating something she shouldn't have been investigating. Her death tonight is supposed to look like an accident, but it's really about protecting national security." Sarah was stunned by this revelation. Was Williams claiming that Catherine had somehow become a security threat? That seemed impossible. Catherine's life was an open book, her activities constantly monitored and publicly reported. What could she possibly have discovered that would make someone want to kill her? "What investigation?" Sarah demanded. "What did Catherine find out?" Williams glanced around nervously, clearly torn between his loyalty to the conspiracy and his apparent desire to justify his actions. "She's been asking questions about her security arrangements. She noticed patterns, inconsistencies in personnel assignments. She started requesting specific officers for certain events, bypassing Hartley's recommendations. Last week, she asked to review the background files for her entire protection team." The implications of Williams's words were staggering. If Catherine had become suspicious of her own security team, if she had been investigating the very people assigned to protect her, then the conspiracy might have decided to eliminate her before she could expose them. "So you decided to kill her to cover up your crimes?" Sarah asked, horrified by the callousness of the logic. "It's not that simple," Williams protested. There are foreign intelligence services involved. Catherine stumbled onto something that could compromise ongoing operations. Her death was deemed necessary to protect larger interests. Sarah's radio crackled to life with Thompson's voice. Control! I have eyes on suspicious activity near the stage area. Request immediate backup. Williams heard the transmission and his face went white. They know, he whispered. You've ruined everything. Suddenly, Williams lunged toward the lighting controls, trying to complete whatever sabotage he had been working on. Sarah reacted instinctively, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the panel. They struggled silently, both trying to avoid attracting attention from the nearby guests and staff. Williams was stronger than Sarah, but desperation gave her an advantage. She managed to push him away from the controls and place herself between him and the panel. It's over, Williams, she said firmly. Whatever this conspiracy is, it ends now. You don't understand, Williams said desperately. If Catherine lives, if she continues her investigation, she'll expose operations that have been years in the making. Good people will die. National security will be compromised. Then we'll deal with those consequences, Sarah replied. But we don't deal with them by murdering innocent people. On stage, Catherine was reaching the climax of her speech, completely unaware of the life and death struggle taking place just meters away. Her words about hope and healing for sick children rang throughout the auditorium, while Sarah fought to prevent those same words from being her last. Williams made one final desperate attempt to reach the controls, but Sarah was ready for him. She pressed her radio button and spoke clearly. Officer down in stage left wing. Need immediate assistance. Within seconds, Thompson appeared in the wings, followed by two other security officers who Sarah prayed were not part of the conspiracy. Williams saw that he was outnumbered and finally stopped struggling. Take him into custody, Sarah instructed the arriving officers. He's been tampering with the stage electrical systems. As Williams was led away, Sarah quickly examined the lighting controls to assess what damage he had done. Her basic knowledge of electrical systems told her that Williams had indeed created the potential for a dangerous power surge, but his sabotage was incomplete. Catherine was safe for the moment, but even as relief flooded through her, Sarah realized that Williams's arrest would alert the other conspirators that their plot had been discovered. Morrison, Bradley, and the others would know that something had gone wrong, and they might decide to attempt a more direct attack. Catherine concluded her speech to sustained applause, completely unaware that her life had just been saved by Sarah's quick thinking. As the princess left the stage, Sarah positioned herself even closer than before, knowing that the most dangerous part of the evening was yet to come. Thompson appeared at her side as they escorted Catherine back through the backstage area. Williams is in custody, he reported quietly. But I've lost visual contact with Bradley, and Morrison is acting nervous. I think they know their plan has been compromised. What about the other 3 conspirators you identified? Sarah asked. I've been watching them all evening. They seem to be maintaining normal positions, but that could change quickly now that Williams has been arrested. As they reached the reception area where Catherine would spend the final hour of the gala meeting with donors and dignitaries, Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent message from Commander Hartley. All units report to command post immediately for security update. Priority 1. Sarah and Thompson exchanged glances. Hartley was calling all security personnel away from Catherine, leaving her with minimal protection. It was either a massive coincidence or the beginning of the conspirators' backup plan. We can't both leave her, Thompson said quietly. If this is a trap, she'll be completely vulnerable. Sarah made a quick decision. You go to the command post. Find out what Hartley is planning. I'll stay with Catherine and call for backup if anything happens. As Thompson reluctantly headed toward Hartley's command post, Sarah found herself alone as Catherine's primary protection. Around her, the gala continued with its elegant conversations and charity celebrations, but Sarah knew that beneath the surface, a deadly game was still being played. The final hour of the evening would determine whether Catherine lived or died, whether the conspiracy would succeed or fail, and whether the British monarchy would face its greatest crisis in modern history. Sarah steeled herself for whatever was to come, knowing that everything now depended on her ability to protect Catherine until they could safely return to the palace. The command post was located in a converted office space behind the Opera House's main administrative area. Thompson approached it with growing apprehension. knowing that he was walking into the heart of the conspiracy that had threatened Catherine's life. His hand rested near his weapon as he prepared for whatever confrontation awaited him. Commander Hartley stood at the center of the room, surrounded by maps, communication equipment, and several members of the security team. His expression was grim as Thompson entered, and something in his eyes suggested that he was aware the evening had not gone according to plan. "Thompson, good. We have a situation that requires immediate attention," Hartley began, his tone carrying an urgency that Thompson had never heard before. "We've received intelligence suggesting that there may be a credible threat against the princess tonight. I need all available personnel to assist with enhanced security measures." Thompson kept his expression neutral while his mind raced. Hartley was either genuinely concerned about a threat he hadn't orchestrated, or he was preparing to use this enhanced security as cover for a more direct attack on Catherine. Given what Thompson had overheard that morning, he strongly suspected the latter. "What kind of threat, sir?" Thompson asked, playing along while scanning the room for other conspirators. "Foreign intelligence services," Hartley replied smoothly. "We have reason to believe that hostile agents may attempt to harm the princess during her departure from the venue. I'm implementing emergency protocols to ensure her safety." Detective Inspector Morrison stood near the communication console, listening intently to Hartley's briefing. Officer Bradley had mysteriously reappeared and was studying a floor plan of the Opera House. Thompson noted that all of the people he and Sarah had identified as potential conspirators were present in the command post, while Catherine was protected only by Sarah and a skeleton crew of security personnel. "Sir," Thompson said carefully, "shouldn't we maintain normal coverage around the princess while implementing these enhanced measures? Pulling everyone away from her seems to create vulnerabilities." Hartley's eyes flashed with something that might have been annoyance or suspicion. "The threat intelligence suggests that the attack will come during her departure. We need all personnel focused on securing the exit routes and transportation arrangements." Thompson realized that this was indeed the conspirators' backup plan. With Williams arrested and the electrical sabotage discovered, they were moving to Plan B, isolate Catherine by pulling her protection team away, then stage a more direct attack during her departure from the Opera House. "I'd like to return to the princess, sir," Thompson said. "As one of her primary protection officers tonight, I feel I should maintain close coverage." "Negative," Hartley replied firmly. "I need you here to coordinate with the local police units." "That's an order, Thompson." The tone of Hartley's voice made it clear that this was not a request. Thompson was being detained in the command post to prevent him from interfering with whatever was about to happen to Catherine. He needed to find a way to warn Sarah without alerting the conspirators to his suspicions. Meanwhile, back in the main reception area, Sarah was growing increasingly concerned about the security situation developing around Catherine. Nearly all of the palace protection team had been called away for Hartley's priority briefing, leaving Catherine with only Sarah and 2 officers from the Opera House's security staff. People Sarah didn't know and couldn't necessarily trust. Catherine continued to charm the remaining guests, completely unaware that her protection had been systematically reduced to a dangerously minimal level. She spoke enthusiastically about the evening's success, the funds raised for children's hospitals, and her gratitude to everyone who had supported the charity event. At 9:45 p.m., Sarah received a radio message that sent chills down her spine. "Princess Escort Team, prepare for departure in 5 minutes. Enhanced security protocols in effect." The message came from Morrison, not from Thompson or any of the other officers Sarah trusted. She realized that the conspirators were now directly controlling Catherine's movements, and the departure phase of the evening, which Thompson had identified as one of the most vulnerable times, was about to begin. Sarah made a critical decision. She activated her radio on an emergency frequency that bypassed the standard command structure and connected directly to Scotland Yard's Royal Protection Command Center. "Emergency override. This is Officer Mitchell, badge number 4729. I have credible intelligence of an immediate threat to Princess Catherine. Request emergency backup at Royal Opera House. Multiple officers may be compromised." The response came back immediately. "Mitchell, confirm your identity and location. We show no emergency protocols in effect." "Confirmed. This is Detective Sarah Mitchell, currently assigned to Princess Catherine's protection detail." We have discovered a conspiracy within the palace security team. Commander Hartley and multiple officers are involved in a plot against the princess. I repeat, multiple officers are compromised. There was a brief pause. Then, Mitchell, maintain your position and protect the princess at all costs. Emergency response teams are being dispatched. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Sarah had to keep Catherine safe for 6 more minutes while the conspirators prepared to move her into whatever trap they had prepared. She looked around the reception area, noting exit routes and potential defensive positions, then approached Catherine.
Your Royal Highness, Sarah said quietly, I need to speak with you privately for just a moment about a security matter.
Catherine's expression immediately became concerned. Of course. Is everything all right? Sarah guided Catherine to a quiet corner of the reception area, out of earshot of the remaining guests and security personnel. Ma'am, I need you to trust me completely. There is a credible threat against your life tonight, and some members of your own protection team may be involved. Catherine's face went pale, but she maintained her composure with the grace that had made her beloved by the British people. What kind of threat? Who can I trust? I don't have time to explain everything, but I need you to delay your departure for as long as possible. Emergency backup is on the way, but they need a few more minutes to arrive. Can you find a reason to extend your time here? Catherine nodded quickly, her royal training taking over. I can request a few more minutes with the charity organizers. There were some donors I wanted to thank personally before leaving. As Catherine moved back into the reception area to buy them precious time, Sarah positioned herself to monitor all approaches to the princess. Her radio crackled with increasingly urgent messages from the conspirators. Princess Escort Team, report to departure position immediately, came Morrison's voice. We need to maintain schedule for security reasons. Sarah keyed her radio. Princess Catherine has requested additional time with the charity organizers. Departure delayed by 10 minutes. There was a pause, then Hartley's voice cut through the radio chatter. Negative. Departure proceeds as scheduled. This is a direct order. Sarah made another crucial decision. She turned off her radio entirely, cutting off communication with the compromised command structure. Now she was on her own until the Scotland Yard backup arrived. 2 minutes later, Morrison appeared in the reception area, flanked by Officer Bradley and 2 other men Sarah didn't recognize. His expression was stern as he approached Catherine. Your Royal Highness, I'm afraid we need to depart immediately. There have been some security developments that require us to adjust our timeline. Catherine looked to Sarah, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. I'm afraid that won't be possible just yet, Inspector Morrison. Catherine replied with perfect royal composure. I have commitments to several major donors that cannot be postponed. Morrison's professional mask began to slip slightly. Ma'am, I must insist. The security situation has changed and we need to move you to a secure location immediately. Sarah stepped closer to Catherine, placing herself between the princess and Morrison. Perhaps you could explain the nature of these security developments, Inspector. I haven't received any updated threat assessments. Morrison's eyes narrowed as he looked at Sarah. Officer Mitchell, you were ordered to report to the command post. Why are you still here? My primary responsibility is to protect Princess Catherine, Sarah replied firmly. I'm not leaving my post without direct orders from Scotland Yard. The tension in the air was now palpable. The remaining guests in the reception area began to notice that something unusual was happening between the princess and her security team. Morrison realized that his window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Step aside, Mitchell, Morrison said quietly, his hand moving toward his weapon. You're interfering with a lawful security operation. No, Sarah replied, her own hand moving to her weapon. I'm preventing an assassination attempt. The word assassination hung in the air like a physical presence. Catherine gasped softly behind Sarah, while Morrison's face went completely white. Around them, the elegant charity reception froze as guests realized they were witnessing a confrontation between armed police officers. Morrison made his choice. He reached for his weapon, but Sarah was ready for him. Years of training took over as she drew her own gun and pointed it directly at Morrison's chest. Armed police, stand down, Sarah shouted, her voice carrying across the entire reception area. Everyone get back. The scene erupted into chaos. Guests screamed and ran for the exits while Sarah kept her weapon trained on Morrison. Bradley and the two unidentified men also drew their weapons, creating a standoff in the middle of the elegant opera house reception. "You don't understand what you're doing," Morrison said desperately. "There are larger forces at work here. Catherine's investigation threatens national security operations. This is bigger than one person." "The only thing I understand is that you're threatening to kill an innocent woman," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. At that moment, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. The Scotland Yard emergency response teams were arriving, just as they had promised. Morrison heard the sirens and knew that his conspiracy had failed. "It's over," Sarah said firmly. "Drop your weapons and surrender." Morrison looked around at his accomplices, at the fleeing guests, at Catherine standing behind Sarah's protective shield. His shoulders sagged as the reality of the situation sank in. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly, but he slowly placed his weapon on the ground. Bradley and the other two men followed Morrison's lead, dropping their weapons and raising their hands as the sound of police vehicles grew louder outside. Within minutes, Scotland Yard tactical teams flooded into the Opera House, securing the scene and taking the conspirators into custody. Commander Hartley and the other conspirators in the command post were arrested simultaneously, ending the most serious threat to the royal family in decades. Thompson was freed from the command post and reunited with Sarah and Catherine in the reception area. His relief at seeing them both safe was evident on his face as he approached. "Thank God you're both all right," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "When I realized what Hartley was planning for the departure, I was terrified I wouldn't be able to warn you in time." Catherine, who had maintained her composure throughout the entire ordeal, finally allowed her emotions to show. "I can't believe this happened," she said quietly. "These were people we trusted, people who were supposed to protect us." Sarah holstered her weapon and turned to face Catherine. "Your Royal Highness, I'm sorry you had to experience this, but you should know that Thompson's courage in warning me about the conspiracy is what saved your life tonight." Catherine looked at Thompson with profound gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "Both of you. I owe you my life." The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Commander Hartley had indeed been recruited by foreign intelligence services years earlier, and had slowly built a network of compromised officers within the Royal Protection Service. Catherine's growing suspicions about security irregularities had threatened to expose the entire operation, leading to the decision to eliminate her. The conspiracy had roots that went deeper than anyone had initially realized. The Foreign Intelligence Service had been using Hartley's position to gather information about royal family movements, security protocols, and even state secrets that Catherine might have access to through her husband's position as heir to the throne. Williams's claim about Catherine's investigation proved to be accurate. She had been quietly documenting inconsistencies in her security arrangements, noting patterns in personnel assignments that didn't follow normal protocols. Her request to review background files for her protection team had been the final trigger that convinced the conspirators she was becoming too dangerous to ignore. In the weeks that followed, the entire Royal Protection Service underwent a comprehensive review and restructuring. New protocols were implemented to prevent the recruitment of compromised officers, and additional oversight mechanisms were put in place to monitor security arrangements. Sarah and Thompson were both commended for their actions and offered promotions within the Royal Protection Service. Sarah accepted, knowing that her experience had given her unique insights into the vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed. Thompson also remained in service, but requested a transfer to a different unit, feeling that the events of that night had changed his perspective on the work. Catherine herself recovered from the trauma remarkably well, though the experience had clearly affected her deeply. She insisted on personally thanking every officer who had remained loyal during the crisis, and she worked closely with security officials to improve protocols for detecting potential threats from within. The charity gala, despite the dramatic events of that evening, was ultimately considered a success. The funds raised went on to support children's hospitals across the United Kingdom, fulfilling Catherine's original goal for the event. But for everyone involved, the gala would always be remembered as the night when a Royal Guard's silent warning and the courage of two dedicated officers prevented a tragedy that could have changed the course of British history. 6 months later, Sarah received a personal letter from Catherine, thanking her again for her service and expressing the princess's continued gratitude for Sarah's quick thinking and bravery. The letter concluded with words that Sarah would treasure for the rest of her career. "Your actions that night reminded me why the British people can have faith in those who serve and protect. Thank you for proving that honor and courage still matter in our modern world." The conspiracy had been exposed, the conspirators brought to justice, and the royal family's safety secured. But perhaps most importantly, the events of that November evening had demonstrated that even in the face of betrayal from within, there were still people willing to risk everything to protect the innocent and defend the values that the monarchy represented. Sarah kept Catherine's letter in her desk drawer throughout the rest of her career, a reminder of the night when 3 simple taps on her shoulder had changed everything and saved a life that meant so much to millions of people around the world.